The left brain is a good employee, but it's a terrible CEO. And most of this comes down to the left brain's fascination with the abstract, whether it's language or thinking, because that's what an abstraction is. It's something that exists only as a thought. The philosopher Wittgenstein used the example of a game as an interesting abstraction, because you can come up with all kinds of games and you can list them all out and try to find some single similarity between them all, and you can't do it. That's exactly how abstract that idea of game is. And if you look in Buddhism, there's almost a distaste for the abstract, or perhaps you could say more of a joy for actual reality rather than the thought of reality, or as Alan Watts put it, one who thinks all the time thinks nothing but thoughts and therefore lives in a world of illusion. So when we ask the question of who are we, that's one of my favorites, we can get a different answer depending on when we ask the question. If you monitor your sense of self over even a short period, what you'll find is many of these selves emerge. Even in a very short time, you may have a dozen selves, even over 20 minutes. And some of them are optimistic or pessimistic, or they're worried or they're joyful. And what the self is, behind the self, is just an abstraction. It's almost kind of like an average. So what is an average? Well, let's just get right to statistics. If I said 3, 4, and 5, and these are just numbers, and I said, well, what's the average? You'd say 4, and you add them all up and divide, and you come up with the mean. Well, what if it was just 3 and 5? Well, the average would still be 4, but that's weird because there isn't even 4 in the actual data. But that's the nature of abstractions. That's a thought that doesn't even have to be part of the original collection. And that's the exact same thing with the sense of self. This self behind the self, it's such an abstraction that it doesn't even have to ever itself even appear. And in fact, this abstract self that I'm talking about, it's very difficult to even experience it directly. So that's what the self is. It's an abstraction created by the left brain. But the interesting thing about this is that many of our problems are also abstractions too. I mean, if I put it right to you and said, well, list all of your problems. Well, unless you're in physical pain, you don't have any. I mean, if you're not homeless, if you're sitting there and you've got food and shelter and you're not in physical pain, it's difficult to really create an argument that you've got any problems outside of abstractions. So I want to leave you with a really nice piece by Louis Armstrong. And if you've ever listened to What a Wonderful World, the thing that may have left you with a really positive sensation. And that's because the entire song is basically one that's driven by sensory experiences, and how there's almost an immediate joy once we come back to simple, basic sensory experiences rather than thinking about them all the time.